He smirked as he signed the divorce papers, convinced he'd finally outsmarted his poor, naive wife. The same woman he'd secretly robbed of $10 million to build a new life with his glamorous mistress. But what he didn't know was that the woman he just abandoned in humiliation had unknowingly inherited the very company that just hired him as a desperate new employee. The same halls he'd soon walk she already owned, in silence. How did a man who thought he'd won everything end up serving the woman he betrayed? And what did she do that ruined them completely? The night that rewrote Emily Carter Hale's destiny began with laughter. Not hers, but theirs. The ballroom at the St. Regis shimmered with golden chandeliers, the floor alive with billionaires, politicians, and press. It was the Hale Global Winter Gala, where wealth was paraded like virtue and cruelty often wore perfume. Emily entered quietly, her sapphire gown modest compared to the diamonds dripping from the wrists of Jonathan's mistress, Olivia Grant. The PR executive everyone whispered about, now boldly clinging to Jonathan's arm. The crowd turned, not out of admiration but hunger, waiting to see if the rumors were true. Jonathan raised his glass, his smile slicing through the air. "To new beginning," he said, eyes flicking toward Olivia. The cameras flashed, catching Emily's still face beside him, her silence interpreted as defeat. She had always been the quiet one, the engineer's daughter who never cared for status, who built her husband's empire with ideas he later claimed as his own. The Carter family name had once stood proudly on skyscrapers, but after her father's death, debts and silent betrayals had erased it. Jonathan had been her savior then, or so she thought. The orchestra swelled. Olivia approached, her red lips curling. "Emily, darling," she said sweetly, holding a crystal glass filled with burgundy wine. "You must be exhausted keeping up appearances." Emily's hands trembled slightly, but her voice was steady. "Appearances fade. Character doesn't." A hush followed, brief, brittle. Then Olivia's smirk deepened. In one swift motion, she tilted the glass, splashing crimson across Emily's gown. The crowd gasped, then laughed. The kind of laughter that burns into memory. Cameras flashed again, capturing Emily's shock, the wine dripping like blood down silk. Jonathan didn't stop Olivia. He didn't even look at his wife. He simply handed Olivia a napkin, murmuring, "Let's not make a scene." But the scene had already been made. Emily excused herself with quiet dignity, walking through the murmuring crowd as whispers rippled behind her. Pathetic. Divorce soon. Poor thing. Inside the restroom, silence swallowed her whole. She leaned on the marble counter, staring at her reflection, the red stain blooming across blue fabric, like a wound over her heart. For a long moment, she just breathed, eyes glistening, the laughter from the ballroom echoing faintly through the door. She thought of her father, Richard Carter, the man who built cities and raised her to believe integrity was wealth. She remembered his voice, calm and firm. "Power doesn't scream, Emily, it waits." Her lip quivered, but she didn't cry. She couldn't afford to, not here. She removed the ruined gown's pin, wiped the wine from her skin, and met her own gaze again. For the first time, she saw not the abandoned wife or humiliated woman, but something coiled, quiet, awakening. "Let them laugh," she whispered. "They won't be laughing long." Outside, the music swelled again. Jonathan was dancing with Olivia now, their public victory on display. But in the reflection, Emily's eyes no longer looked defeated. They looked calculating. That was the moment her silence turned into strategy. The moment the story of revenge was born. She straightened, fixed her hair, and stepped out of the restroom, walking back into the glittering ballroom as if nothing had happened, every movement controlled, every smile rehearsed. She even congratulated Jonathan on his speech, and when Olivia offered her another mocking glance, Emily returned it with a soft, unbothered smile that unsettled the mistress for reasons she couldn't explain, because Emily knew something they didn't. Humiliation is temporary. Power, when awakened, is permanent. As she left the gala that night, the cold wind hit her like a baptism. She didn't know yet that within 48 hours, the same man who mocked her would be kneeling before her company desk, unaware that fate had already inverted their places. The morning light crawled through the glass walls of the Hale penthouse, cruel in its honesty. It didn't soften or hide, it revealed every shadow, every secret. The faint hum of the city below mixed with the low hiss of the espresso machine, its rhythm broken only by Jonathan's careless humming. Emily stood at the far end of the marble kitchen island, her fingers wrapped around a mug of untouched coffee. The aroma of roasted beans reminded her of gentler mornings, before betrayal had a face, before her marriage became a performance for shareholders. On the table between them lay a tablet, its screen flashing headlines from every tabloid outlet in New York. Mistress pours wine on CEO's wife at charity gala. Hale's cold response sparks outrage. The fall of Emily Hale, once the power behind the throne, now the punchline. Her face was everywhere. The freeze frame of humiliation had gone viral overnight. Every angle, every smirk, every drop of wine replayed in slow motion by gossip channels eager to feed on the scandal. Jonathan's laughter broke her trance. "You should see the comments," he said between bites of toast. "Some people actually feel sorry for you. Can you imagine?" Poor little Emily, victim of a public spill. He smirked, sliding the tablet toward her. "I warned you not to attend, but you insisted. You can't blame Olivia for having a little fun." Emily didn't look up. "You call that fun?" He leaned back, still chewing, his tone smug. "You've always taken things too personally. This," he gestured toward the screen, "is just business. Speaking of which, once the merger finalizes next week, I'll be filing for divorce. It's time we both move on." Her heart clenched, but her face remained unreadable. "You mean after your $8.4 billion deal closes?" "Exactly." He smiled as if she'd just validated his genius. "You'll be well taken care of. I've already arranged the settlement." He reached for a manila folder, sliding it across the counter. "Sign these later. It's mostly formality, division of assets, joint accounts, the usual. I even took care of the paperwork for you." Emily's eyes flickered down. Her name was there, in elegant blue ink, her signature, except she hadn't signed anything. She flipped the page, scanning the financial terms. The numbers didn't make sense. A wire transfer of $10 million from their joint account. The same amount she had noticed missing 2 weeks ago. Her pulse quickened. "When was this signed?" Jonathan shrugged, pretending disinterest. "A few weeks ago. Don't overthink it, Emily. The lawyers handled everything." But she was no longer listening. Her mind replayed the words in silence. "Your signature, handled everything. Divorce after the merger." She looked at him then, really looked. The man who once promised forever now sat before her as a stranger. His expensive watch gleamed as he scrolled through stock updates, his lips curving into a self-satisfied grin. "Jonathan," she said softly, "do you ever think about how you got here?" He laughed. "You mean how we got here? Sure, you married up. I worked hard. We built something great. Until you stopped being useful." The words hit like shards of glass, but Emily's face didn't flinch. She simply nodded, gathering the folder. "Right, useful." He poured himself more coffee. "Don't look so grim. Olivia and I will handle the social side of Hale Global. You're not built for it. You'll thank me one day." She turned away before he could see the glint in her eyes, not of tears, but of clarity. In his study later that morning, while Jonathan took a call in the balcony garden, Emily flipped through his locked drawers with surgical precision. The air smelled of cologne and deceit. Beneath stacks of reports and personal invoices, she found a leather-bound portfolio labeled Carter Holdings Transfer Authorization. Her breath caught. Her father's company. She opened it, and there it was. A forged signature identical to hers, authorizing a transfer of controlling shares from Carter Engineering into Hale Global Holdings, dated months after her father's death. Her father's legacy, the company he built from sweat and principle, had been stolen in silence, paper by paper, forged in her name by the man she once trusted most. For a long moment, she couldn't move. The realization rippled through her like a slow collapse. Jonathan hadn't just taken her money, he had taken her name, her bloodline, her inheritance. She closed the folder gently, her heartbeat steadying. Then she smiled, the kind of smile that hid storms. When Jonathan re-entered the room, she greeted him with that same smile. "I'll have the papers reviewed before I sign." He raised an eyebrow, suspicious but amused. "Suit yourself. Just don't delay. The merger won't wait." "Neither will I," she replied quietly. That night, while Jonathan and Olivia attended another investor dinner, Emily sat alone at her desk, the folder open beneath the dim glow of her lamp. She began listing every name, every date, every transaction linked to her forged consent. Her mind was no longer clouded by heartbreak. It was sharpened by betrayal. Somewhere in her father's old office lay the truth, and she intended to find it. Before the sun rose, she called a name she hadn't spoken in years, Mr. Whitaker, her father's old attorney. When his tired voice answered, Emily said only one sentence: "I need to know how deep Jonathan Hale's forgery goes." The next morning, the city was still half asleep when Emily arrived at Whitaker & Lowe, a law firm that smelled faintly of paper, dust, and quiet secrets. Rain streaked across the glass walls, turning the skyline into watercolor of gray and gold. Mr. Edward Whitaker, her late father's longtime counsel, greeted her in his office, his white hair slicked back, his hands steady, but eyes wary. "Emily," he said, standing to shake her hand, "I've been expecting this call for years. I just didn't think it would come from you." She sat down, her posture composed but her voice calm with purpose. "Jonathan forged my signature on Carter Holdings transfer papers. I need proof. Every document, every authorization trail, every witness." Whitaker exhaled, glancing toward a locked cabinet behind him. "You're not wrong to suspect that. Your father left all his original trusts and succession papers with me. Jonathan came to see me 2 weeks after Richard's funeral. Claimed he was acting under your authority. I refused him. A week later, he returned with your notarized consent." He slid open the cabinet and laid 2 documents side by side. "Here," he said, tapping the paper, "your real signature and the one he used." The difference was subtle. A loop slightly extended, a curve less sharp, to most eyes identical, but to Emily it was unmistakable. She stared at it, her pulse slowing, her fury cooling into a razor's edge. "He took everything my father built," she murmured, "and he used my hand to do it." Whitaker nodded. "He restructured the Carter assets under Hale Global Holdings. On paper, you signed away your inheritance. In truth, you were never notified." Emily straightened, her voice low. "Then I want it back. All of it. Every asset, every share, every name he corrupted." Whitaker studied her face. The same quiet fire he'd once seen in Richard Carter's eyes now reflected in hers. "You understand what that means? Once you act, this becomes war." "I'm not declaring war," she replied. "I'm reclaiming what's mine." He nodded once and handed her a slim flash drive. "This contains everything I could preserve. The real deeds, the email exchanges, the notarized chain of transfers. Use it carefully. If Jonathan realizes you're building a case—" "He won't," she said, slipping the drive into her bag. "He still thinks I'm broken." When she stepped out into the rain, she didn't open her umbrella. The cold drops soaked into her coat, grounding her in the moment. Each one felt like a baptism, a quiet washing away of the woman who endured and the birth of the woman who would act. That night, she called Ethan Brooks, her childhood friend, a systems analyst who once worked in Hale Global's cybersecurity division before being forced out by Jonathan. "Ethan," she said over the phone, her tone deliberate, "I need your help, but this can't lead back to me." Ethan's voice was cautious. "You're asking me to go against Jonathan Hale?" "No," she replied. "I'm asking you to help me expose him." An hour later, Ethan met her at her father's old townhouse. He looked older, wearier, but when he saw the determination in her eyes, something in him straightened. "I can access their servers," he said quietly. "If there's offshore laundering or forged reports, it'll be in their merger archives. But you'll need to play your part inside the company. If Jonathan or Olivia suspects—" "They won't," she interrupted. "I'll stay close to both of them." Over the following week, Emily played her role to perfection. By day, she appeared subdued, the compliant wife accompanying Jonathan to meetings, smiling faintly beside Olivia during photo ops. She even attended corporate dinners, wearing that same calm mask that unsettled them both. But at night, her transformation was silent and precise. Ethan sent encrypted files, invoices, offshore accounts, altered timestamps linking Jonathan's name to embezzled funds and insider trading. Each revelation was another thread in the web Jonathan had woven, and now she was pulling it apart. Inside Hale Global's sleek glass tower, whispers began to stir. Employees noticed small things: how Emily lingered near the finance department, how she met with mid-level managers dismissed by Jonathan in past restructurings, how she asked questions that sounded innocent but cut too deep. "Mrs. Hale," one executive murmured during a board prep meeting, "you seem very interested in our merger logistics." Emily smiled, her tone light. "A wife should know what her husband is building, don't you think?" They laughed politely, unaware she was memorizing every word. Late one night, she sat in her car outside Hale Global headquarters, watching the reflection of the building's glowing logo on her windshield. It had once been a symbol of success. Now it looked like a monument to theft. Ethan's voice came through her earpiece. "I found it. A dummy account in Zurich under Jonathan's alias. Same one tied to the Carter Holdings sale." Emily closed her eyes, inhaling slowly. "Good. Package everything. Tomorrow is the signing ceremony. I want the evidence ready." "Emily," Ethan said quietly, "you know this will destroy him." She opened her eyes, staring at the tower one last time. "He destroyed me first. I'm just returning the balance." When she drove home that night, Jonathan and Olivia were in the living room, laughing over champagne. Olivia's laughter was shrill, the sound of someone who believed the world was hers. Jonathan turned when he saw Emily, smirking. "Don't stay up too late," he said mockingly. "Tomorrow decides everything." Emily smiled faintly, setting her purse down. "It certainly does." As she climbed the stairs, the flash drive in her bag pressed against her side, a quiet reminder that she already held his empire's pulse in her hand. Tomorrow would not just decide everything, it would end everything. The next morning, the sun rose like judgment, bright, unforgiving, merciless. Inside the Hale Global Tower, the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. Cameras lined the press corridor, investors filled the marble atrium, and security swarmed the upper floors. Today was the signing ceremony for the $8.4 billion merger between Hale Global and Armitage International. A deal that would cement Jonathan Hale as one of the most powerful corporate figures in America. Emily arrived in silence. Her cream suit was sleek, deliberate, power disguised as grace. The whispers began the moment she stepped through the glass doors. Some recognized her as the humiliated wife from the gala. Others noticed the poise, the unshakable calm. None realized that beneath her polished stillness lay a weapon months in the making. At the head of the boardroom, Jonathan was all charisma, the press hanging on every word, Olivia glowing beside him like a trophy polished for display. "As of today," he announced, voice rich with triumph, "Hale Global moves into a new era of innovation and expansion. Together we—" The door opened, every head turned. Emily entered, holding a slim leather briefcase. "Sorry I'm late," she said softly. Jonathan's smile faltered. "Emily, what are you doing here?" "The same thing as you," she replied, walking toward the table. "Making history." The tension rippled through the room like static. Olivia shifted uneasily. The investors exchanged puzzled looks. Jonathan forced a chuckle. "You're not authorized to be in this meeting. Security—" "No need," Emily interrupted, placing the briefcase on the table. "I'm already on the board's access list, as of this morning." She opened the briefcase, pulling out a stack of notarized documents. The seal of Whitaker & Lowe glinted under the light. "Before you finalize this merger, there's something the investors should see." Jonathan's expression hardened. "Emily, this isn't the place." "Oh, it's exactly the place." She handed the first set of papers to the Armitage chairman. "You might want to review these before committing $8.4 billion. The room fell silent as pages turned. The investors' expressions shifted from curiosity to alarm. Emily continued, her tone steady, precise. "These documents show that Jonathan Hale forged my legal authority to transfer ownership of Carter Holdings, the engineering subsidiary that formed the foundation of Hale Global. Every signature tied to those acquisitions, she paused, looking directly at him, was falsified. The chairman looked up, voice sharp. Is this true? Jonathan's voice cracked slightly. This is absurd. She's lying. Emily pressed a button on a small device. The projector behind her flickered to life, displaying Jonathan's emails. Each one time-stamped, each one detailing transfers to offshore accounts under his alias. Ethan's careful digital tracing laid it all bare. One email read clearly, "Ensure Carter's signature is replicated exactly." She must never find out. Gasps filled the room. Olivia's face went pale. Emily's gaze never wavered. The company you built, Jonathan, was built on theft of my inheritance, my name, and my father's life's work. You didn't just steal money. You stole legacy. Security moved quietly toward Jonathan as the chairman's voice grew cold. This merger is suspended pending investigation. Mr. Hale, you are hereby removed from the negotiation floor. Jonathan stood desperate. Emily, stop this. You can't. I can, she said, her voice like tempered steel. Because Carter Holdings legally reverts to its rightful owner. Me. The guard stepped forward. Jonathan's protest turned into pleading. Emily, please. You don't understand. I did it for us. For us? Her voice broke into a quiet laugh. You poured my father's blood into your empire and called it love. The boardroom watched as security escorted Jonathan out, his voice echoing down the hall, growing smaller, weaker. Olivia stood frozen, eyes wet with disbelief. Emily turned to her. You might want to find another PR job. This one's ending early. And with that, she gathered the documents, thanked the board, and walked out, leaving behind a stunned silence that would echo across financial headlines for weeks. By sunset, every major outlet carried the story. Jonathan Hale ousted amid fraud scandal. Wife regains control of Carter Holdings. The empire he built on lies collapsed overnight. Investors withdrew, partnerships dissolved, and within days Hale Global was stripped to its bones. Emily, meanwhile, didn't celebrate. She simply worked. From her new office, her father's restored corner suite, she rebuilt Carter Engineering into Carter Global Solutions, focusing on ethical architecture and sustainable design. Her first directive, restore the community housing project her father never finished. 2 weeks later, she visited the old Carter site, the same place where she had once watched her father lay foundations with his own hands. The wind smelled of dust and rain, but this time, it felt like homecoming. She walked through the unfinished structure, the sun dipping low behind the cranes. Workers paused as she passed, respectful but curious. Emily smiled softly, touching one of the old stone beams her father had carved himself. Her reflection caught in a nearby window, no longer the woman in tears before a mirror, but the one who had risen from it. The woman who had turned humiliation into history. She whispered quietly, as if speaking to the ghost of her father. You were right, Dad. Power doesn't scream, it waits. And for a long moment, she just stood there, head high, eyes forward, as the city lights blinked awake around her. Jonathan Hale's name would vanish from the skyline within a month. Olivia Grant would disappear from public view. But Emily Carter Hale would remain, not as someone's wife or victim, but as the quiet storm that rebuilt what greed had tried to erase. Because in the end, she didn't just ruin them. She reclaimed everything they took.